default of 500 milliseconds here. So that's what's going on there. That's why this passed when I didn't define that value in there. So that's what's going on. So I've got my wait for exist here. It waits until this body element is there, and I'm going to go back to that that command information. So back here, you can see it's running the same command, a post to the Selenium session, looking for any elements that have a CSS selector of this this selector right here, and it doesn't find anything in my result, and so it waits a little bit of time and then runs the same query, and finally it found it, and it's happy with that, and it moves on through the test. So that's where it's checking to see the visibility here through the displayed command. And the result comes back as true, so that's true, and then you can click the button and everything. So that's how you can kind of work through fonts. Font loading is if you do have a class that gets added to your body, just add to your before each, or when you run your URL or create like a custom command or something, add that where you're waiting for that class name to be added to your body. So that's how you do font loading. And it looks like with Angular, it's basically, I guess if you don't have too much JavaScript running at once when the page first loads, it'll load in time for the Selenium test to start running. But let's see. One thing we can do on this page is actually send a command, ask, and see how it waited just a second before giving the response. I wonder if that's actually making a network call or if these are just built in. See, it looks to me like it's not Sesame is often as you want. It looks to me like all these responses are built into the code itself. Let's see if I can open this up. Come on. Yeah, that's what I wanted. And hope I'm doing well. Hope I'm doing well. Oh, I hope it's doing well at the responses. Maybe it's in shims. Oh, there's that apostrophe there. That might be throwing it off. This is more of a curiosity than anything interesting. Okay. I'm just basically trying to figure out where it's loading that all these responses from. I wonder if that's Google Analytics and the things that want to track everything I do. Those are just plain styles. It has to load the content from somewhere. What are some examples? What do you think about the bot? Oh, there's my examples. What is Angular? Cool. So here's another example of something that we can mess with, timeouts. And let's see, if I inspect this element, not that element, that's my question element. This is a conversation. And in the conversation, I have different sections. So there's the question and then the result. So when I come in here and I type in what is Angular, you see it adds a new one. And then inside of there, we'll have a result of whatever the response is. So the way we'd write a test for this is pretty simple. I'll actually get rid of this. Let's just save that. No. I'll get rid of that. I'll change this back to nodebot.io. Was it nodebot? No, it was ngbot.io. Hear that helicopter outside. Load the basic home page, and then I don't need to wait for anything to exist. I don't think. We'll see. Maybe I do need to wait for something to exist. But should tell me about Angular. So if I So let's let my question equal, what was the question? What is Angular? And then let response equal that. So you don't really have to check that entire response. We could just see that Angular is a framework. The first part of the response, we can just check that and make sure that it's coming through good. And then I'm going to do browser.setValue. And then I want to get my selector here for that question input. And then I'm going to set it to question. And then browser.click. And in here, I'm going to click that button. And then I will expect browser.isExisting. Actually, what do I want? Maybe existing. Maybe I want, these are states. Protocol state is visible, is selected, is existing. I think an is existing would work. So I want to check that is existing something with that text. Select by visible text. No, this is a select command, or sorry, for select boxes and everything. Wait for text. This actually doesn't wait for a specific text. It just waits for a element to have text. But you can use it in that way. I'm going to use the text selector. So this equals, and I'm going to be looking for a div that starts with my response. And I'm going to expect this to be true, So this should fail right off the bat because this response isn't going to be there. And I also need to make sure that that div is there. So let's jump back into here and see what these elements are. So I've got my input that has a class of, has a name of new question. So I'm going to use that using an attribute selector, name equals, and then new question. Set the value on that. Then I'm going to click this ask button, class of ask. Click the button, class of ask, and then I'm going to expect my div with the content of what is Angular to be an asked question. So I will do .ask question and then start equals and pass in my question. So basically I'm expecting this element to exist. And then I'm also going to expect my result to exist as well. And this is what I'm expecting to fail. And that's going to be a class of result. So I can change this from a div over to result. I think I can do this. I need to look at the selector information in the developer guide because the way that these partial text selectors work is that you sometimes have to chain them together like this, but I'm not entirely sure. So let's see, we've got our link text, which is just a straight equal sign, partial link text, element with certain text. Okay, so here, okay, so it does work with IDs and class names. So we've got a class name here equals, and so that's looking for the exact same text. We wanted the star because we only want to check that it's, at least with this one, we only want to check that it's the start of the response. This one, we do want to make sure that it's the exact same text, I believe. Unless there's like a, okay, I was going to say unless there's like a span or something inside of here, but there isn't, so. Okay, let's run this test and see how this works. And see what I forgot to do when I was setting everything up. So it loads the file, asks a question, and it worked. Okay, so expected false to be true. That's not a very useful error message. And that's kind of what happens when you start using browser.isExisting and these is commands inside of your chai assertions, is that you're going to get expected false to be true. And so we can add a message here saying question should appear, and then response should appear. That way, when this fails, it's going to give us a response should appear or question should appear. That way you can tell which one is the one that's failing. Okay, so it is failing on the response. It's saying the response should appear, expected false to be true. So I think what's going on at this point is that response isn't there yet. So what we want to do is expect, actually we don't want to expect, we want to do browser.wait for exist. That, or we want wait for text. The trouble is, if we have multiple of these, how do we wait for the right test? So we are going to narrow down our selector to the last child. No, we don't. Yeah, we do. We do. Okay. So we've got all these different sections here. So we're going to go into the conversation. We're going to say let conversation browser dot element. I'm going to do that. Most recent conversation is what I want. And then I'm going to do a last child. So I'm going to get the last child of the conversation, and I think that's supposed to be, I don't know if that's supposed to be 1 or 2. I think it works with both, but I've got all that working, yeah. Okay, so I want to get the last child of my conversation list. Actually, I want, that's what I want. Last child section. Because I did that selector wrong. Basically, it would look for the last conversation section, and it would just bring up this one, which isn't what we want. We want to get to the specific section. We want this one right here. So that's using the last child. So from within there, we can say most recent conversation dot is existing, and then most recent conversation dot is existing result. And then in here, we could say wait for text and pass in the result. And that's going to wait for this element to have text inside of it. And what I'm just wondering about is when I do ask a question, these dots pop up, but what is it that appears inside those? Is there any text that appears inside it? So I'm going to do a break on subtree modifications. Basically, that's saying anything that gets added to this HTML tree, it's going to go ahead and just stop execution on. So when I ask a question here, it pauses in my debugger, and I can see that it's trying to insert in here. It's trying to insert that new node. And here's what's going on is... let's see. Oh, it went all the way through. No. Let's see. I'm going to play through. Okay, so here's what I wanted is at this spot right now, I've got my question is there. This loading icon is there, and I want to see what is inside that loading. A typing container, and then I've got just some typing indicators. So in theory, this doesn't have any text inside of it. Even though it has HTML inside of it, it shouldn't have any text inside of it. So if I do wait for text on the result, it should wait until this is done through the debugger and that text has actually appeared. So there it finally appears. Okay, so that's what I want to try. And in theory, with this commented out, I'm going to make sure that it fails. And then when I add it back in, it should go back to passing. And then I'm going to call it a day. There's my question. Okay, so it did fail as expected. Now if I come in here for wait for text and I run that, it still failed. So it didn't wait for that text. So that means either the wait for text it already had text inside of it or something like that. So now I'm just going to do some logging.